Imagine a law where, selling a deadly cancer-causing cigarette to an adult is perfectly fine.
Yeah, completely legal.
Right, completely legal. But selling them the exact product that practically eradicated smoking in Sweden could literally send you to prison for 2 years.
It sounds made up, to be honest.
It really does. So welcome to today's deep dive. For you listening, we are pulling apart the UK's Tobacco and Vapes Act 2026.
Which is a massive piece of legislation.
Huge.
Yeah.
And on the surface, the government pitched this as like one of the most radical, health-first, anti-smoking measures ever enacted anywhere.
Right, that was the PR around it anyway.
Exactly. But when you look closely at the actual text of the legislation, you uncover a landscape that is just full of staggering contradictions.
Yeah, I mean, the stated mission is public health, obviously.
Right.
But the actual mechanics of the law reveal a government that's sort of paralyzed by mixed signals.
Because of that core tension we just mentioned.
Exactly. This act makes it a criminal offense carrying up to 2 years of hard time to manufacture or sell snus, which is the product that gave Sweden the lowest smoking mortality rate in all of Europe. But simultaneously, it fiercely protects the legal sale of highly lethal combustible cigarettes to every single adult who already smokes them today.
It's wild. You can go to prison for providing a harm reduction tool, but the deadliest product on the retail market is legally protected.
Protected for current adults, yeah.
So today, we're going to explore why a government would write a law this way. We'll unpack how public health is actually addressed or, completely sidelined.
Or sideline, yeah.
We'll dig into that strange ban on the Swedish strategy, and we'll figure out what this all means for the future of UK public health.
Because it's a very complicated area, and you have to be careful with inferences here.
Absolutely. And to understand the architecture of this weird double standard, we have to start by following the money, right?
Always follow the money.
Always. We have to talk about the Treasury's absolute addiction to tobacco revenue.
Yeah. So analysts refer to this as the fiscal trap. The British state is structurally dependent on the sale of combustible tobacco.
Just how dependent are we talking?
We are talking about £8 billion a year collected specifically from tobacco duty.
Wow.
8 billion.
Yeah, 8 billion. To put that massive number into perspective for you, that works out to roughly £280 for every single household in the country.
That is, that's not a rounding error you can just wave away.
Not at all. It makes up 0.6% of all government receipts. It is a load-bearing pillar of the national budget.
So they literally can't just turn it off.
Right. And this reliance creates a deeply morbid actuarial reality.
Morbid how?
Well, it's an uncomfortable truth to discuss, but when you look at models from completely different ends of the political spectrum, so like the health advocates at Action on Smoking and Health, or ASA.
Right, they're typically left-leaning or health-focused.
Yeah, and then you have the free market think tank, the Institute of Economic Affairs, the IEA.
Right.
Both of them point out the exact same underlying financial dynamic, which is what?
Smokers, on average, die significantly younger.
Oh, wow.
So from a strictly cold-blooded fiscal accounting perspective, citizens dying younger actually relieves a massive amount of pressure on state pensions and late-stage social care.
That is incredibly grim.
It is grim, but it's the math.
So wait, the government collects billions up front in taxes while they are alive and smoking here.
Exactly.
And then, ironically, saves billions on the back end because those taxpayers don't live long enough to draw down their pensions or require a decade of expensive elderly care.
That is the grim mathematics behind the policy.
Just to be clear for you listening, we're not endorsing this view. We're just reporting what the economic models from both ASH and the IEA actually say.
Right, we're just looking at the source material. The ASH model factors in variables like lost economic productivity and direct healthcare costs. They estimate an overall net cost of public finances, but even their model explicitly acknowledges that £245 million are saved annually just in reduced pension payments alone.
Just pensions.
Just pensions. And the IEA model goes further, estimating billions saved annually when you factor in all the avoided late-life state expenditures.
So regardless of which economic model you favor, it sounds like the timing of the money is the real hurdle here.
The temporal distribution is everything. The £8 billion in tax revenue arrives in the Exchequer, the UK Treasury's bank account today.
Right.
But the healthcare savings from people quitting smoking, that would only accrue slowly over decades.
I see. So a Treasury trying to manage short-term national deficits literally cannot afford for everyone to quit tomorrow.
They really can. A rapid mass migration away from combustible tobacco is exactly what a pure health-first approach would demand.
Right, get everyone to quit immediately.
But it would trigger an immediate £8 billion revenue crisis that the government simply cannot absorb.
Which brings the mechanics of Section 1 of the Act into incredibly sharp focus.
Yes, the generational ban.
Right, the famous generational ban. For you listening, this is the part of the law that makes it illegal to sell tobacco to anyone born after January 1st, 2009.
Right.
But when you look at how it operates, it is glacially slow.
Painfully slow.
I mean, it's like discovering your house has a massive termite problem, but those termites are somehow paying your mortgage.
That's a good way to put it.
So you decide, I'm only going to exterminate the termites born after 2009, hoping the rest just keep making the payments for the next few decades.
That is exactly what's happening. The Office for Budget Responsibility, the OBR, actually ran the numbers on this generational ban to see the financial impact.
And what did they find?
Because the ban only affects people turning 18 in 2027 and beyond, they estimate it will only reduce tax receipts by £0.1 billion by the year 2030.
0.1 billion.
Yeah.
That is an absolute drop in the ocean compared to the 8 billion they rely on.
Exactly. They are managing the decline of smoking at the exact pace of human mortality.
So it protects the revenue stream today while slowly bleeding it out over, 70 years?
Pretty much. The act is fundamentally not designed to stop smoking quickly. It prioritizes the exchequer over immediate public health gains.
Right.
Now, the government is trying to offset some of that future loss with a new vaping products duty, which kicks in during 2026.
Right, a new tax on vapes.
But the OBR projects that when this new vape tax reaches maturity in 2030 to 2031, it will only bring in £565 million a year.
565 million versus 8 billion.
Yeah.
They are replacing a tiny fraction of the tax base.
It's just a fraction, yeah.
But hold on, if the government can't afford for everyone to quit combustible tobacco at once, how are they handling the alternative products that actually help people quit? Like vapes.
Well, this is where the legislation collides head-on with clinical harm reduction.
Okay, break that down for us.
To understand the vaping regulations in this act, you first have to understand the clinical baseline, which, by the way, has been remarkably stable for over a decade.
The science is pretty settled on this.
Very settled. Public Health England's landmark 2015 review established that vaping is roughly 95% less harmful than smoking tobacco.
95%, because you're completely removing the combustion, right?
Exactly. The mechanism. There is no fire, no tar, no carbon monoxide.
Right.
And the Cochrane Tobacco Addiction Group, which is widely considered the global gold standard for evaluating medical interventions, they concluded in 2025 with high certainty that nicotine e-cigarettes are highly effective for smoking cessation.
Like better than patches or gum.
Significantly more effective than traditional nicotine replacement therapies. And the economic modeling backed this clinical success up too.
Oh, really? Who did the modeling on that?
Professor Francesco Moscone at Brunel University, London, he modeled that transitioning just 50% of adult smokers to vapes would save the National Health Service £518 million every single year.
518 million saved. So clinically and economically, getting adult smokers to switch to vapes is a massive victory.
A huge victory.
But the market didn't just stay with middle-aged adults trying to quit, did it?
No, it didn't. The market shifted violently. It exploded with cheap, brightly colored, highly flavored disposable vapes.
Right.
And they expanded aggressively into youth populations.
That's what everyone sees in the news.
Yeah. The ASH 2025 data shows that 20% of 11 to 17-year-olds in the UK have tried vaping. We are talking about 400,000 children who currently vape.
Hold on, you're ignoring the elephant in the room here. What about the gateway effect?
Right, the gateway theory.
Yeah, because every parent looking at those numbers is terrified that vaping is just a stepping stone, chemically training kids so they eventually graduate to real combustible cigarettes.
And that is the dominant cultural narrative. But the ASH 2025 data actually complicates the gateway theory significantly.
How so?
The pathway isn't a straight line. Among the kids who have tried vaping, 36% actually tried a combustible cigarette first.
Oh, wait, really? They smoked first?
Yes, and another 37% have never tried smoking at all. So the behavioral data suggests these are generally risk-taking adolescents experimenting with whatever restricted products they can get their hands on, rather than, a rigid pharmacological stepping stone from vapes straight to cigarettes.
I see. So the real danger isn't necessarily that a vape turns a kid into a smoker?
The real documented harm is direct, severe nicotine dependency in a population that otherwise would never have touched the chemical.
Ah, the dependency itself is the problem.
Exactly. And the dependency numbers are sobering. In 2025, 47% of youth vapors reported having strong, very strong, or extreme urges to vape.
Only half of them.
Yeah. Their dependency profile now mirrors heavily addicted youth smokers. And this epidemic of dependency forced the government's hand. They felt they had to act to protect minors.
But this creates a demographic tug of war, doesn't it?
Big time.
Because the data sources show that youth and adults want totally different things from these products. Let's dig into this flavor inversion because it explains so much of the regulatory headache.
It really is a structural nightmare for anyone trying to write a unified law. Because youth overwhelmingly prefer fruit flavors, about 59% of them, and sweet or candy flavors at 17%.
But adult switchers, the people trying to get off deadly cigarettes,
Only a tiny fraction want those sweet profiles. 20% of adults want menthol or mint, and 11% want tobacco flavors.
so the market is completely inverted.
Completely.
Adults want sensory continuity. They want the mint or tobacco taste to, trick their brain into thinking they're still smoking while they break the habit.
Exactly.
But youth want candy. So the products pulling adults away from lethal cigarettes are not the products hooking the kids.
Right.
So how does the act actually handle this divide? Do they write nuanced rules for different products?
They do not. No. The legislative fix in the Tobacco and Vapes Act is to simply outsource all the hard choices.
Outsource them to who?
Part 5 of the Act grants the Secretary of State sweeping delegated powers.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It means the Act itself doesn't explicitly ban flavors or design specific packaging rules. Instead, it gives government ministers the broad authority to regulate vape packaging, flavors, and retail displays later on through secondary legislation.
So Parliament votes for the scaffolding, but the ministers are left to take the political heat for actually building the walls later.
Exactly. And because the government is treating the entire vaping category with such heavy suspicion to address the youth panic, they have effectively accepted that adult switchers are going to become collateral damage in the crackdown.
Wow. Which triggers a psychological side effect that might be more dangerous than anything else in the law.
You're talking about the perception data.
Yeah, because the panic over youth led to treating vapes like toxic waste, and that triggered a massive collapse in public perception.
A total collapse in public risk literacy.
Consider the numbers on this for you listening, because they are genuinely terrifying for public health.
They really are.
In 2013, only 13% of 11 to 17-year-olds thought vaping was equally or more harmful than smoking. But by 2025, that number skyrocketed to 63%.
And it isn't just isolated to youth. 56% of the adult population holds this exact same false belief.
More than half of adults.
Yeah. And most tragically, 63% of current smokers who have never even tried a vape believe it is equally or more harmful than the combustible cigarette they are currently smoking.
That's incredibly sad. The people who most desperately need to switch away from fire and tar are the ones most convinced there is zero health benefit to doing so.
Exactly.
Let's unpack the psychology of why this happened. This is about regulatory signaling, isn't it?
It is a textbook case of how humans use heuristics, basically mental shortcuts, to assess danger.
Right.
When a government mandates that vapes must be hidden behind a counter exactly like cigarettes and suggests they might be packaged in drab, plain boxes exactly like cigarettes, the human brain intuitively assumes they must be exactly as deadly as cigarettes.
So the regulatory architecture actively educates the public to believe clinical falsehoods.
Yes.
And the Act doesn't just fail to correct this massive public misunderstanding. Doesn't it actually make it a criminal offense for companies to tell the truth?
It does. Part 6 of the Act criminalizes vape advertising.
So wait, if I'm a vape manufacturer and I rent a billboard that says completely accurately, based on clinical data from Public Health England, this product is 95% less harmful than a cigarette, I could go to prison.
Yes, you could literally go to prison. The maximum statutory penalty is 2 years imprisonment.
2 years for stating a clinical fact.
Right. What the Act establishes is the complete nationalization of harm reduction. The commercial market is entirely silenced by threat of incarceration. Only the government is legally permitted to tell the public the truth about relative risk.
But wait, does the Act at least legally require the government to tell people the truth? If they are silencing the companies, surely the state takes on the duty of correcting that 63% of smokers who are misinformed.
That is the critical catch in the text.
Okay.
Section 126 provides a defense to the advertising ban if a public authority arranges the promotion specifically for public health purposes.
Oh, good, so they can do it.
They can. However, the language in the statute is entirely permissive. The state is permitted to run educational campaigns. They are not required to do it.
Wow.
There is absolutely no statutory duty in the act to correct this catastrophic public misunderstanding.
So by legally bundling vaping and smoking together, with the hidden displays, the plain packaging powers, and the threat of prison for advertising all to deter kids, the act fundamentally breaks the adult public's understanding of risk.
It completely breaks it.
But if you think the penalties around vaping are contradictory, look at how they handle the single most successful harm reduction tool in Europe.
Yeah, the snus ban.
Right. If the government's excuse for cracking down on vapes is to protect children, how do they justify banning a product that has zero youth appeal but practically eradicated smoking in Sweden?
This is where the UK's confused approach to vaping turns into outright documented hostility toward a proven success story.
So take Sweden as a case study. Sweden has the lowest smoking prevalence in all of Europe, hovering around 5.6%.
Lowest in Europe.
And they also have the lowest tobacco-related mortality. And how did they achieve this? It wasn't by banning everything in sight.
Right.
It was primarily because Swedish men transitioned away from combustible cigarettes to something called snus.
Yeah. So for context, snus is an oral, non-combustible tobacco product.
It's like a pouch, right?
Yeah, it usually comes in small pouches that you place under your upper lip. It delivers nicotine, satisfying the dependency, but it completely removes the lethal tar, the carbon monoxide, and the toxic byproducts of setting tobacco on fire.
Which is the part that kills you.
Exactly. It isn't 100% harmless, no nicotine product is, but the epidemiological evidence from Sweden shows a massive population-level drop in smoking-related deaths.
It is the clearest real-world test of harm reduction in existence.
Without a doubt.
So, facing a public health crisis at home and seeing this massive, undeniable demographic success in Sweden, how does the UK's Tobacco and Vapes Act 2026 handle snus?
Sections 7 through 9 of the Act explicitly maintain and extend a total criminal ban on manufacturing or selling snus anywhere in the UK.
Wait, a total criminal ban?
Total ban.
The penalty structures in this act reveal the absolute absurdity of the logic here. Let me get this straight. If you sell a deadly combustible cigarette to a teenager born after 2009, actively violating the generational ban, you get hit with a £2,500 fine.
That is correct.
But if you sell snus, the exact product that practically eradicated smoking in Sweden, you face up to 2 years in prison.
You are reading the text correctly. Selling the deadly cigarette to a prohibited minor gets you a financial penalty. Selling the proven harm reduction tool gets you hard time. It carries the exact same 2-year prison sentence as publishing a vape advertisement quoting Public Health England.
That is, how does a modern public health law end up with a penalty structure that backward?
It happens because this specific ban isn't actually a health-based decision.
What is it then?
It is a legacy of institutional inertia.
Institutional inertia.
Yeah. The UK originally inherited the ban on snus from an old European Union Tobacco Products Directive.
Oh, from before Brexit.
Exactly. Sweden basically had to fight the EU for a special legal loophole just to keep their own successful product legal inside their own borders.
Right.
So when writing the 2026 Act, UK lawmakers simply copy-pasted the old EU ban into the new domestic legislation.
They just copy-pasted it.
Yeah, nobody had the political capital to fight for snus on top of the massive legislative brawls they were already having over the generational ban and the youth vaping crisis.
So who actually wrote this thing? When you look at the protected cigarette sales, the vaping crackdown, and the snus ban, it feels like 4 different laws taped together.
It feels that way because it essentially is. The Tobacco and Vapes Act is not a coherent, unified public health strategy. It's a Frankenstein monster built from 4 conflicting political philosophies that were all fighting for dominance in Parliament during the drafting process.
Okay, let's break those factions down. Who was fighting for what?
Well, first, you have the prohibitionists. They believe all tobacco is evil and must be eradicated entirely.
Okay, and what did they get?
They are the ones who fought for and won the generational ban.
Right, the slow ban. Okay, then you have the harm reductionists, the clinical data folks. What did they win?
They managed to keep vapes legally available for adults. They fought off the prohibitionists who wanted vapes included in the total generational ban.
But then the precautionary camp steps in, right? The ones terrified of the youth data.
Yes. The precautionary camp secured all those sweeping delegated powers in Part 5.
The ones letting ministers ban flavors later.
Exactly. They ensured ministers have the authority to crack down on packaging and flavors later to protect minors.
Which leaves the fourth faction, the fiscal managers, the Treasury.
And the Treasury won the pacing of the entire law. They secured the licensing regime, the registration requirements, and a generational ban so incredibly slow that it ensures their £8 billion tax revenue doesn't evaporate overnight.
So it's 4 different chefs in the kitchen, all trying to bake a different cake and just throwing all the ingredients into one pan.
Pretty much. Every faction got a small victory, but nobody got enough influence to make the final law actually make logical sense.
We are left with a law that points in 4 different directions simultaneously.
Yes. Which brings us to the reckoning, because Parliament, in a rare moment of legislative self-awareness, apparently realized this was a massive gamble.
You're talking about Section 165.
Yes.
For you listening, what does Section 165 actually do?
It mandates a formal statutory review of the Act's operation between the years 2030 and 2033.
Okay.
The Secretary of State is legally required to assess both the economic and health impacts of this law, gather all the data, and report back to Parliament.
It's essentially a statutory confession, isn't it? It is Parliament admitting in writing that they have absolutely no idea if this highly compromised settlement is actually going to work.
They're setting a timer.
Yeah.
By 2033, they need to see if delegating all the vape restrictions to ministers actually drops the 47% youth dependency rate without utterly destroying adult cessation rates.
Right.
They need to see if that £565 million vaping products duty accidentally drives adults back to the black market, or worse, back to combustible smoking.
And they need to see if that massive perception collapsed the 63% of the public who wrongly think vaping is as bad as smoking gets better or worse under a regime that throws people in prison for advertising clinical data.
Exactly. This raises a vital question for that 2033 review.
What's that?
If the Act successfully suppresses youth uptake of vapes, but adult smoking rates stall completely because adults are now terrified to switch to alternatives, is the Act considered a success?
That's the $1 million, or I guess the £8 billion question.
Yeah.
So to synthesize this deep dive for you listening, the Tobacco and Vapes Act 2026 is a masterclass in managing competing priorities.
Very well put.
It successfully manages the exchequer's revenues so the Treasury doesn't go broke tomorrow. It manages political coalitions by giving the prohibitionists, the harm reductionists, and the precautionary camp each a small slice of victory.
Right.
And it manages the youth optics by talking incredibly tough on packaging and flavors. But the one thing it fails to manage is a coherent, unified approach to actually improving public health.
Because whenever public health collided with fiscal stability or political feasibility in this text, public health repeatedly gave way.
It gave way every single time. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over, going all the way back to that paradox we started with.
Yeah.
When the government finally conducts its mandatory review in 2033, they will look at the data. Think about this. If they find that the incredibly slow generational ban perfectly preserved their £8 billion tax revenue, which is what it's designed to do.
Right. But the advertising bans and the snus bans kept adult smoking rates stubbornly high, will they consider the act a failure? Or will they secretly consider it a silent fiscal success? What really happens when a government's budget relies heavily on the exact same deadly habit it is supposedly trying to cure?
That is the ultimate question they have to answer.
It really is.